Hello photographers, this video is one of the lessons from my brand new video course Beyond Manual Mode, which I'm launching as part of the 2025-day photography bundle. The 5-day deal photography bundle is available from October 15th to October 20th, 2020 and includes photography courses from incredible instructors like Jerry Giannis, Joel Grimes, and of course, me. You can get the 5-day deal at this link right here. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you more about my new course Beyond Manual Mode and about the 5-day deal. For now, I want to get to this lesson from Beyond Manual Mode, which is about the most important thing in photography, light. Just as we looked at and learned about color, we're going to look at and learn about light. If you are not paying attention to the light and using it when shooting, you are leaving a lot on the table. The first thing we have to address is this idea of natural light versus artificial light. Bottom line, there's no such thing as artificial light. Light is light. It doesn't matter if it's coming from the sun, a flash, a window, whatever. It's all light, but that doesn't mean that it's all the same. Light coming from different sources has different qualities. What will help you make great photographs is understanding those qualities and what they do to your photos. There are 4 qualities of light that we're going to cover in this lesson, and we're going to start with the direction. Where the light is coming from plays a huge role in what your photograph looks like. And in each of these examples that I'm about to show you, the only thing that changes is the direction of the light. In the first photo, the light is coming from above the subject, just like the sun would at noon. As you can see, this light creates hot spots on the top of the subject, and any protrusions on your subject will cast shadows downward, obscuring parts of your subject that you may want lit. In the second photo, the light is coming from behind the subject, creating a backlit silhouette. This type of silhouette is often desirable. However, if you are not trying to create a silhouette, backlight is one of the worst types of lighting to deal with. This is because the difference in brightness between the light source and your subject is often so great that it will exceed the camera's dynamic range capabilities. When you're trying to photograph a silhouette, that's great, but if you're not trying to photograph a silhouette, what you end up with is a blown out background and a subject that, while it might be decently exposed, also has a ton of spill from that backlight. When dealing with backlight, the easiest thing to do is reposition so that the light ends up behind you as the photographer or coming from some other angle. In the third photo, the light is coming from the side and slightly above the subject, mimicking the direction you might get in late afternoon sun. This direction is often quite flattering and desirable. It tends to create pleasing highlights and shadows on the subject, with highlights in places we want to see detail in, and shadows that create contrast and highlight textures and additional details of the subject. In this last photo, the light is coming from in front of and slightly above the subject. This is front light, and it's the opposite of backlight. Light from this direction tends to reduce texture on the subject and eliminate most of the shadows, creating flat, even light. Now, in describing the directionality of light and the characteristics of light coming from different directions, I'm not suggesting that any one direction of light is better than another. All directions can make for great photographs, depending on what you want your photo to look like. The key is understanding what light coming at your subject from different directions will do and how to use that to your advantage. To fully take advantage of this, you have to study it. And what I want you to do is spend time studying photos that you've taken and photos that you admire. And while you're doing this, look at the directionality of the light in those photos. By studying other photos, you'll start to see what directionalities of light you are drawn to, and you'll be able to start using that in your own work. Another thing I suggest you do is study the direction of light on a simple subject. You can take an egg or a figurine like this, turn off all the lights in a room, and then take your phone's flashlight or similar light and just move it all around the subject and see how that changes the appearance of the subject. This will help you viscerally understand the direction of light in a really fundamental way. Final note on directionality is to remember that if you can't move your light source, you may be able to move your subject to change the directionality. Additionally, directionality is almost infinite in your ability to place a light around the subject or move the subject. So it's not limited to just over here or directly above or in front or behind. Those are just the general areas. The second quality is the color of the light. Now, we already discussed the importance of color in the color theory and in the white balance lessons. In the white balance lesson, I did show you how to get perfectly accurate colors in your photos, and we also discussed using white balance to deliberately introduce colors into your images. The color of your light is also a very important quality, but you're not limited to whatever the color of the light source is and to white balance. You can also use colored light sources, of which there are many different options. For example, if using flash, like in the photos you saw in the color theory lesson, you can introduce colors through the use of color gels. If you are using standard lamps, you can get colored light bulbs like these bulbs here. Or you can get RGB LED lights like this one right here that let you set the light to virtually any color you choose. Either way, the color of the light is something you should absolutely consider and control for when taking your photos. The best way to prepare for this is to again study photos to see what colors you are drawn to and to see how other photographers use color in their photos to give you ideas for your own work. So that's two. The third quality of light is the size of the light source. What the size of the light source does is determine whether you have what photographers often call hard or soft light. People also often think of soft light as diffused light, which in a manner of speaking is true. But the thing to realize is that when a light is made softer or more diffuse, what's actually happening is that the light is being made larger. So if soft light comes from a large light source, then hard light comes from a small light source. Because the source is small, the light is not able to spread out as much. This makes the areas where the light strikes the subject brighter and harsher, and it creates very dark shadows with very abrupt transitions between the highlights and the shadows. When you use a larger light source, that light is spread out over a greater area, which means the intensity of that light is also spread out. This leads to highlights that are less harsh, as well as shadows that are significantly brighter, with much smoother transitions between the highlight and the shadow areas. This is why this is commonly referred to as soft light, because the edges and the transitions are softer. So, how do you identify the size of a light source? The size of the source itself isn't the only determining factor. What's important is the size of the source relative to the subject. Here's what I mean. The sun has a diameter of over 864,000 miles, which is objectively huge. But the sun is also nearly 93 million miles away from Earth. So when you're taking a photograph of something on Earth in direct sun, you get very hard light because even though the sun is huge, it is also so far away from the subject that relative to the subject, the sun is tiny. By the same token, a bare speed light flash has a head that's about 2 inches by 3 inches. And when you use that to light a subject, that also gives you hard light because even though it is significantly closer than the sun is, it's also incredibly small relative to most subjects. But when you put an umbrella on that flash, you've now got something that makes the light source 48 inches across. And if you put that right next to your subject, that light is going to be very large relative to that subject. So it's the size and the distance. But if you're ever unsure if you're dealing with a large or a small source, just look at your subject and see what the shadows and highlights look like. Are the shadows very dark and hard-edged? That's a small, hard light. Are the shadows lighter with smooth transitions? That's going to be a big, soft light. And just as with the previous qualities, you should study this and see what types of light you are drawn to and also how hard and soft light makes a photo feel for you. And as with all of the other qualities we're talking about, one is not better than the other. In some situations, for some photos, you will want hard light, and for others, you will want soft light, and sometimes you may want a combination of both. Our final quality is specularity. Specularity is the glare of light reflecting off of a surface. There are two types of specularity we're going to address here. The first is reflections off of surfaces you want to completely eliminate, like on glasses. When you see a reflection in a photo, the camera and light are positioned in a way that allows for the light to reflect directly off of the surface and into your camera. Reflection of light is all about the angle, so removing a reflection like that is actually very easy. All you have to do is change the angle so that the light doesn't reflect directly into your camera. You can do that by changing the angle of the light, the angle at which the camera is positioned, or the angle of the reflective surface itself. And in the bonus lessons of this course, I have an entire video that goes in depth into eliminating this type of glare or specularity in your photos. Now, the other type of specularity is reflections off of your subject that create highlights in areas that you want, but that you don't want to be as glaring as they may be. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Do you see that hot spot on the subject? That is a highlight that in general you want, but you don't necessarily want it to be as harsh as it is in this example. You can manage this type of specularity two ways. First is by making the light source larger. Glare like that comes from the intensity of the reflection, and when you have a smaller light source, the full intensity of that light is packed into the small area that the light is reflecting off of. This makes the reflection brighter, both because of the intensity of it and because of the greater contrast between the bright reflection and the darker shadows. By making the light source larger, you spread the intensity of the light over a larger area, reducing the intensity of the specular highlight. Additionally, by making that light larger, you allow more light to get into the shadows, which makes them brighter. With a specular highlight that is not as bright and shadows that are brighter, you reduce the contrast, helping to make the highlight appear even less bright. Now you might be thinking, what if I don't use flash? If I'm shooting in the sun or in some other light source, how on earth do I make that light source bigger? If you can't make the light source bigger by moving the light closer to your subject or your subject closer to the light, you can force the light to pass through additional diffusion surfaces. Here's an example. The photo on the left was shot with a flash and an umbrella, nicely managing the specularity of the image. But say you're not happy with the specular highlight in the eye, and say you'd like to diminish that, like you see in the photo on the right. In that photo on the right, I used the same flash, also with an umbrella, but then I held a second umbrella in between the flash and the first umbrella, forcing the light to pass through both umbrella surfaces. The end result, as you can see, is a specular highlight that is significantly less intense than in the shot with just one umbrella. What's happening here is that by forcing the light through an additional diffusion surface, the light is forced to spread out even more as it travels to the subject. As it passes through the first surface, we take the full intensity of that light and spread it out over that surface, reducing the light intensity per square inch. Then, when it goes through this second umbrella, you take that already reduced intensity light and reduce it again, making it spread out over the second surface area. This gives us light that is more even across the surface of the subject, reducing the specularity of the highlight even more and reducing the overall contrast even more. Now, if you're shooting out in the sun or using some other ambient light source, you can use what's called a scrim to do this. A scrim is just a diffusion panel that you can put between your subject and the light source to make the light source larger relative to your subject. And if you don't want to use a scrim, you can use some sort of a reflector to bounce the light off of and make it larger as it goes onto your subject. Now, you've probably noticed that managing specularity and managing the size of your light go hand in hand, and that is very much the case. While specularity and size are two different qualities, they are very much tied together. And as with direction, size, and color, there is no right specularity. Sometimes you want harsher specular highlights on your subject, such as in this photo here. And in other cases, you don't. It's very much about what you are trying to do with your photo, which gets back to everything we've been learning about in this course, to having a vision or a direction to go in with the photo. And then understanding the different things you can control as a photographer to bring that idea to life in your photo. So, as with everything else, study specularity. Study it in your own photos and in photos that you admire. See how it's used and how you respond to it to get an idea of what you like and don't like. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, this video is part of Beyond Manual Mode, my brand new video course that is launching as part of the 2025-day deal. I'm really proud of Beyond Manual Mode. This new course is all about building on the fundamentals to help you do two things. First is to learn more about your camera and how it works so that you can use your camera to its maximum potential. And second is to embrace and extend your creativity so that you can make images instead of just taking photos. The lessons in Beyond Manual Mode weave together the technical and the creative to give you the tools to start exploring your photography more intensely and more creatively. And like all of my courses, it is packed with fun, practical, and easy to follow lessons. Specifically, Beyond Manual Mode has 17 brand new video lessons covering things like dynamic range, how to give control back to your camera, color theory, and as you saw in this video, the qualities of light. I also included an additional 12 bonus lessons covering things like developing your creative ideas and camera settings that you can use to make your photography life easier. Everything in this course is designed to help you bring what's in your head to life in your photos. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Beyond Manual Mode is launching as part of the 2025-day deal. I have to tell you, it is an honor to be alongside the likes of Joel Grimes, Jessica Whitaker, and all of the other amazing instructors contributing to the 2025-day deal. For example, this video just explained how important light is and how you can control and use the different qualities of light in your photography. Well, one of the other courses you can get as part of the 5-day deal is Jerry Giannis's Magic with Any Light, which has 15 different video lessons that expand greatly on the foundations that I laid out in this video. And that is just one of the 33 different courses you can get as part of the 2025-day deal. What's even more amazing about the 5-day deal is that 10% of all profits go to amazing charities like the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Now, the 5-day deal doesn't last long. It is right in the name. You only have 5 days to jump on this opportunity. The 2020 bundle sale ends on October 20th. So go check out everything you can get at this link and then take some damn photos.